The rich man dumped hot coffee on the biker and laughed. The laugh cut through crystal glasses and linen like a shard. It happened in the Sky Court, the glass-walled restaurant that topped the business district, where city leaders took clients and the chandeliers were as polished as reputations. Jonah Mercer walked in with his jacket heavy with patches, hands that had tightened bolts and steadied friends in storms, a veteran with a calm that came from nights on watch. Victor Langley, owner of half the towers downtown, and a boardroom voice that commanded contracts, rose from his table as if titles could move air. He said, sharp and loud, "You do not belong here." Jonah answered without heat, "We came to celebrate." The hostess moved like she had rehearsed neutrality. The cardamom from someone else sipped coffee mixed with cutlery clinks. In that instant, the room smelled like coffee and panic. Jonah had a history that fit in 2 paragraphs of trophies and 1 long scar. He had been a medic overseas, held the hands of men who did not wake, learned patience from the smallest gestures, and found brotherhood on 2 wheels. His jacket carried patches for missions and memorial runs. He had a daughter named Kayla who had a laugh that filled the small apartment he still called home. That past was not spectacle, it was credential, and he wore it like armor that had been tested. The insult rose like steam before the spill. Victor said again, "You are a stain on this place." Jonah said, "We have a reservation." Victor laughed and asked, "Who will make you leave? A broken bike?" The first exchange slid into others quickly. A diner whispered and pulled out a phone. Jonah kept his voice low. Victor moved closer and said, "You are beneath this room." Jonah met his eyes. A server tried to step between them. Victor shoved him aside, and the coffee tipped. The hot liquid hit Jonah across the cheek and down his jacket. The room sucked in breath. Plates stilled. A woman named Rosa Alvarez gasped and clutched her napkin. Malik Thompson, who had come with Jonah, braced his hands on the table. Lena Park, a guest at the next table, lifted her phone trembling. Officer Cole, off duty, stood and smoothed his shirt. The first sensory blur was visual. Steam, the slick sheen of coffee on fabric, the smell of scorched sugar and leather, the sting of hot liquid on skin, the metallic taste of public shame. Jonah tasted more than coffee. He tasted contempt. Voices rose into a rapid exchange that would define the night. Victor barked, "Get out." Jonah said, "We will not be run out." Victor said, "I said now." Malik said, "You cannot do that." Jonah added, "Apologize." Victor sneered, "Or what?" Lena said, "People are filming." Victor snapped, "Delete that now." Rosa said, "I will not delete it." Tammy Negan stood and asked, "Do you know who you are talking to?" 2. Pastor Hayes simply said, "Shame." Diego from Jonah's group stepped forward and said, "We will make this public." Victor hissed, "You do not scare me." Jonah said, "You are wrong." Miranda from the kitchen opened the side door and peered in, whispering a prayer. Those exchanges moved like current, each line a stone thrown into a glassy river, until the shove and the spill and then silence that was heavy as guilt. The scene slid almost immediately into organization. A friend punched a number. Malik started a live on his phone. The first clip went up with shaky hands and a caption that read, "Rich man pours coffee on veteran." Viewers appeared like a pulse. Within 10 minutes, a local feed had picked it up. The live showed Jonah wiping his face, the dark stain spreading on his jacket, Victor standing as if victory had a price tag. Comments rose by thousands. Alina, a neighbor, posted a memory of Jonah handing her groceries. Pastor Hayes called his contacts and said, "We must stand." Officer Cole called his partner on the force and said, "Make sure the scene stays peaceful." Tammy rallied a list of veteran groups. Malik counted hewers aloud, 5,100, 5,000, and the number grew. The soundscape shifted from clinking forks to the tinny chorus of notifications and the thrum of engines from the street below where people began to arrive. People in the square read comments aloud, names of supporters mapped across the city. The sensory notes multiplied, the visual of phones, the hum of networks, the citrus of takeaway coffee from the bar, the press of bodies at the restaurant entrance, the sharp condensation on metal bike handles coming into view. If this outraged you, you were not alone. If this made you sick to see a man treated like that, say so in the comments. Tell the others whether you stand with community courage or have seen similar indignities. Write March in the comments if you believe public pressure matters. Share one line about a time you saw someone stand up for a neighbor. Your words do two things. They register outrage so it cannot be dismissed as a single voice. They form a ledger of witness that runs through the feeds journalists check when they decide whether to pursue a story. When hundreds of names pile up under a live, editors and producers read them. When strangers tell small stories about Jonah, they create context that turns a viral moment into a movement. Speak briefly and clearly. Say what you saw, say who you support, say one suggestion for action. Those comments helped the organizers find each other that night. They helped a local anchor pick up the thread. They guided volunteers who later sat with Jonah and Kayla in a hall and planned the memorial ride. Now watch how the city answered, how a community turned a spill into an investigation, and how the man who poured coffee began to lose more than his composure. The arrival of allies came without threats and with a sound that changed the air. 200 motorcycles idled at the curb, engines rumbling like distant thunder. Helmets reflected neon and the smell of gasoline mixed with wet leather. Riders named Malik, Diego, Rosa, Tammy, Elena, and others locked their bikes and formed a living wall. Cameras recorded the rows of bikes and the quiet faces of those who had given service, those who had learned honor from hard work. A local reporter, Javier Reed, climbed a planter and spoke into a mic. The footage spread to national feeds. Corporate partners of Victor called his office asking for comment. His PR line rang and stuttered. Investors texted. A board member named Claire sent a terse message that became public. The press called Langley Holdings and asked about conduct. The security detail that had shadowed Victor took their cues and retreated as managers weighed statements. The sensory texture of this moment was the low bass of engines, the metallic taste of adrenaline in Jonah's mouth, the cold bite of October air, the rustle of flags, the flash of phone screens. Public opinion began to tilt. Institutions reacted in hours. The Sky Court issued a statement about maintaining dignity and launched an internal review. A sponsor of a foundation dinner pulled its name from an upcoming event where Victor was to speak. A director on Langley's board resigned, quietly at first, and then with a public note about values. A corporate partner announced an investigation into public conduct. An airline dropped a sponsorship. Calls to Langley's office from local journalists became a flood. His friends on social pages posted distancing comments. His executive assistant, Kira, texted, "This is spinning." The house of cards that wealth and control had built cracks. A bodyguard, Mark, who had stood by for years, stepped away and refused to be in the shots. The moral chorus repeating honor, shame, and solidarity was loud enough to make his network pause. The pattern repeated. Footage seeded outrage. Outrage drew institutions. Institutions applied consequences. Victor called Jonah later with a muffled apology that came too late to stop the headlines. At the town hall the next day, Victor spoke, voice thin. He said, "I am sorry. I did not mean to hurt." The apology fractured on camera. Jonah listened, face composed, and then he spoke to the assembled crowd. Jonah said, "Sorry is a word. Action is what matters." He asked for a public pledge, asked that Victor fund veteran services, asked for a formal apology to Kayla. The room watched him steady and true. The immediate resolution required Victor to sign a community agreement, to donate to a veterans charity, to attend a public dialogue about respect. His company issued a statement about values and responsibility. The micro-epilogue showed a clearing of tables, empty seats at a boardroom, and Jonah back on his bike with Kayla beside him. The moment of victory was not a shout, but a ledger of commitments in a city that watched. 1 month later, there was a memorial ride and a donation plaque placed at the veteran shelter. 3 months later, a photo of Jonah and Kayla at a community dinner circulated with the caption, "Community Wins." 6 months later, the jacket with the coffee stain was framed in the Veterans Hall, a reminder of dignity tested and defended. The legacy was practical and symbolic, a fund to support veterans, volunteer legal clinics, and an annual ride that gathered people who believed that real power was not money but unity and honor. The city kept the story as a lesson. Jonah's name became shorthand for resilience. Victor's empire remained, but with fewer invitations and a reputation that would not be fully repaired. The final image was simple, a group photo under a banner that read "Solidarity" in small letters, and the motor hum fading into a hopeful quiet. If this moved you, subscribe for more stories that celebrate people who turn indignation into change. Remember this line and carry it forward. Real power is not money, it is union.